Hello, welcome back to the Guitar Craft and Other Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Andre Fludd. Before we even get into the topic today, the first thing I want to do is address the title because there are going to, of course, be people who click on the video, who start leaving their angry comment based on the title before they even listen to what I'm going to say today. So for those people, I hope you at least hear this message. For everyone else, I know you'll join me and you'll understand what I'm saying. When you make a YouTube title, you have to assume that there are going to be people who don't fall into your category. However, you need to speak to the highest likelihood of something being true. My title is essentially saying 51% because 51% is most, is the majority. 51% of people who attempt to learn guitar from YouTube will get worse. They won't achieve their goals, and they certainly won't achieve them in an efficient way if they do actually achieve them. Now, of course, if I'm saying 51%, that means you might be in the 49%. You might be someone who is a prodigy, who was able to use YouTube, and you are now a successful, amazing guitar player and your life is fulfilled. I'm happy for you. You don't need this video. But for everyone else, including me, who attempted to do this, you understand already that you've been trying to get better for a long time and you have been stagnant. If you're honest about your progress, it's not where you think it should be at this point. And I'm hoping that you want to learn how you can actually get better and why YouTube is failing you. That's the first thing. Now let's talk about my actual thesis for today's podcast. And well, we should first actually talk about that this is part one of a 3-part series. Part 2, I'm going to explain why most guitar teachers on YouTube suck. And part 3, I'm going to explain how you can actually learn from YouTube if YouTube is all you have. If you don't have any money to buy courses or private lessons, I'm going to teach you how to actually use YouTube effectively in part 3. But for today, part 1, our thesis is this. YouTube is inherently diametrically opposed to skill acquisition. And skill acquisition is, of course, just a fancy word for learning. I'll say it one more time. YouTube is inherently diametrically opposed to skill acquisition. And I'm going to provide you with real, actual evidence why this is the truth. Before we do, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And for those of you who already know me, don't click through this. Don't skip this part because I'll teach you something about me that you didn't know already. Okay. So, of course, I'm Andre Fludd. I have an undergraduate degree in music education where I studied music education and jazz guitar. I have 3 degrees in ethnomusicology, which is the study of music and culture. So I have 2 master's degrees and a PhD. And within music and culture, one of my primary focuses has always been education within that. So I spent a lot of time studying how people learn music. So this topic today is something that I've been thinking about and crafting ideas about for over 10 years, my entire life. Now, here's the thing. I'm not telling you should listen to me today just because I have fancy degrees, right? There are a lot of people with fancy degrees who are not necessarily the best at their craft, okay? But I will say that the one talent I have and that I have honed over my entire life is teaching and learning. I was not naturally gifted at music. I was not a guitar prodigy. I'm sure you can tell by hearing my playing, I'm not a prodigy at guitar, but I was very good at learning how to learn. And when I applied that to guitar, I was able to accelerate my learning at a rate that I hadn't in the prior years. And just to really further drive home the point, learning how to learn is perhaps the most important skill that anyone at any point in their life can develop. Because if you learn how to learn, you can then learn how to do anything you want to do in life, period, for the most part. I can't become a basketball player, like a champion basketball player. That's not possible, but you get what I'm saying. If you learn how to learn, you can do almost anything in your life. And here's the last thing, and this is not me bragging. This is me, again, just trying to get you to understand why you should continue to listen to this podcast. You know me as probably a guitar reviewer, a guitar YouTuber, perhaps a guitar teacher, but this is not the only thing that I have learned to do over my life, of course. I Something completely unrelated to this. I learned how to speak, read, and write Hindi and Urdu, which are two South Asian languages, at the intermediate level as an adult. For those of you who have ever tried to learn a language, you understand how difficult that is. For the linguists who are listening, keep in mind I did that not as my main goal in life, but as my hobby on the side. And I did that over the course of only a couple of years. Very difficult thing to do. I'm not naturally gifted at learning languages. I just have learned how to learn. Here's an example that you'll all be able to relate to if you follow my YouTube channel. You'll know it's only about 5 or 6 months old, and I already have, over 3,000 subscribers. I'm monetized. I have hundreds of thousands of views. I am not a YouTube prodigy. I am not some genius at figuring out how to hack YouTube. But I have had this success this quickly because I worked very hard at learning how to get good at YouTube. This is not a coincidence. I dedicated myself to learning how to get good at YouTube and how to succeed on YouTube. And the result is this accelerated growth, which is statistically speaking, incredibly unlikely. Not me bragging. That is just a statistical fact. Okay. So let's get into the podcast. Hopefully I've convinced you that you should listen to me. Hopefully you now understand why I'm very passionate about the idea of learning and why we're going to apply it to guitar today. The first thing we need to establish in order to really fully unpack this thesis is the best way to learn anything. But before we get into that, one more thing. The thesis again, YouTube is inherently diametrically opposed to skill acquisition. So if YouTube is diametrically opposed to skill acquisition, what is the best way to acquire skills? Any skill. That is going to be learning one-to-one from an expert educator who is usually also at least decent at the thing they're teaching you. Learning one-to-one from that person. So in the case of a guitar teacher, that will be learning from someone who's very gifted at teaching guitar, who is also a good guitar player. They don't have to be great. They don't have to be Greg Koch or Guthrie Govind. They just have to be good enough that you can tell they know what they're talking about. And they also have to be a very good teacher. And of course, at this point, a few of you are going to be like, oh God, he's just going to peddle himself as a guitar teacher and his own courses. No, this podcast doesn't only exist so that you can go to my website, andrefludd.com/courses and buy my courses. That's not the reason this podcast exists. Because even if you don't buy my courses, which you should, I want you to learn how you can learn better, even if it's not from me. Let's continue with this idea of why learning one-to-one with someone who's a skill teacher is very important. If we're taking guitar as the example, when you're learning guitar, you're learning a lot of different things. But one of the things you're learning is how to hear and how to think about music. And when you're learning from someone who has been through that process, who's also good at conveying that information, they can help you along the way avoid certain pitfalls and move towards the right direction. And they'll also teach you how to hear what you need to hear to improve. Okay? So when you're learning one-to-one with this person, they're teaching you the actual thing of guitar playing. They're teaching you how to put your fingers on a fretboard and to play chords and scales and all of that stuff and songs. But they're also, if they're a good teacher, they're teaching you how you can continue to learn. And they do that by opening up your ear to music, by opening up your ability to analyze music so that you can do it on your own eventually. Now, if we were going to take this one step further and make this the perfect learning situation, almost every practice session you had would be with this particular person watching over you so that they can correct you in real time. And then you'd actually record those lessons and go home and watch them diligently and listen for what the corrections are. This is, of course, not realistic. It's not very common. But we need to understand what the absolute best way is so that we can then talk about why YouTube might be the worst way. Why is this the absolute best way? If you're being taught for hours on end and then practicing with someone also watching over you, they're going to constantly reinforce good things and constantly attempt to remove bad things in real time. And then when you go home by yourself and watch that video, you're going to actually hear in a better way what they're actually attempting to remove and correct. While you're in the process of the lesson, while you're in the process of learning, you cannot always hear and see exactly what's happening. But when you go home and watch the video or listen to the audio, you can start to pinpoint exactly what they're saying and what they're correcting, because now you can listen to yourself and them without actually doing the thing. That is the absolute best way to learn anything, but especially music. YouTube is inherently diametrically opposed to skill acquisition. Let's start with issue number one. We're going to have 3 issues today. Issue number 1 is the platform itself, and the platform, of course, today is YouTube. What's wrong with YouTube as a platform when it comes to skill acquisition? The first thing is that it's simply not made for learning. All right? We're going to go through each of these points within issue number 1. I'm going to tell you them all first. Number 1, within issue 1, so 1.1, if you will, YouTube is not designed for learning. Number 2, you can't get real-time feedback. Number 3, you cannot play with the actual person you're learning from for the most part. But issue number 1, the fact that YouTube is not made for learning is perhaps the most important thing to understand. As someone who's been making content for the YouTube platform for several months now, I can tell you that all content creators who are successful, we have one goal, and that is to keep you watching our video for as long as possible, and then hopefully also encouraging you to watch another one of our videos. If we can successfully do that, if we can convince you to click on our video, watch it for a long time, and then click on another video, YouTube will reward us with more views. And if we get more views, we can make more money. We can reach a larger audience. We can try to get more people to buy our courses over at andrefludd.com/courses. That is the goal of every YouTuber. And the reason that's the goal of every YouTuber is because that's the goal of the YouTube platform. And the reason that's the goal of the YouTube platform is because the YouTube platform is driven by advertising, the economics of advertising, whereby the longer you stay on the platform, the more advertisements they can show you, the more they can charge from advertisers to show you those things. So YouTube gets paid by Pepsi, Guitar Center, Sweetwater. They get paid to show an advertisement. YouTube then says to me, or any other one who's trying to make money on YouTube, I will show more people your video if you can prove to us that they will watch your video and watch more of your videos. We do our best to get you to click on our videos and to stay for a long time and then to click more. But in so doing, we cannot be attempting to be the best educators possible. It's impossible. Because the thing that makes you stay on YouTube, which is the reason you saw my video, is the same thing that is going to stop you from learning. Think about that for a second. If you clicked on my video today and you're listening to the podcast up until this point, the reason you got here is because I convinced you to click on this video, and I'm convincing you to listen to this video and to learn from it. But in order to continue to be good enough to get you to click on another video, I have to make sure that you don't just stop here and then go to your room and practice. I have to entice you into clicking part 2 and then clicking part 3. And instead of practicing and instead of learning guitar, you are listening to me now, and I hope you listen to part 2 and part 3. There's no way that I can both succeed at YouTube and succeed at being your guitar teacher at the same time. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible because the platform of YouTube is not designed for education or skill acquisition. It's designed to keep you on YouTube. And you can't get better at guitar while you're sitting on YouTube watching guitar videos. I'm going to give you a real world example eventually, but I just want you to really understand that even if I do my best to be a good guitar teacher, it won't be what keeps you on YouTube. And you know what? I'll give you a real life example, matter of fact, from my channel. For those of you who are not watching the podcast, I'm on YouTube. I'm in an incognito window, which means that YouTube in this window has no data to give me videos. They're just showing me things in general because they don't know who I am as a person. I'm going to look myself up. We're going to go to my channel. Now, if we look at my channel, which we now are for those watching, we look at my top performing videos recently. We have podcasts where I talk about vintage gear. We have the Rhett Shull guitar review. We have the Rick Beato guitar review, Vega Trim, John Mayer review. If we scroll down to what I believe is my absolute best guitar lesson, where I've given you an amazing key to improvisation that it took me over a decade to learn. That video has 308 views in 1 month. The video where I attempt to teach you something that will save you time, that will make you a better guitar player, that will keep you off of YouTube and make you do better, has 308 views. The videos that I try to entice you to watch me talk about stuff that has nothing to do with your improvement have 10, 20, 30, 40,000 views. This is not just the case for me. This is the case for most YouTubers who try to mix the idea of learning and fun content. It's a very difficult thing to do. And the reason it's difficult to do is because if I try to just teach you how to play guitar, I will not reach a wide audience because YouTube knows that you will not stay for that video. You will only stay to listen to me rant about guitar stuff. Those of you who will watch the lessons, I appreciate it, but there are not enough of you to make YouTube push that idea. It's not as much fun to learn. It's much more fun to listen to someone rant about a guitar, period. And I'm guilty of it too. I would much rather listen to someone rant about a guitar than I would listen to a guitar lesson. I'm no different. And YouTube knows that. So that's the first thing. If we continue with this logic a bit more though, actually, while we're on this issue, we start to develop issue number 2. And the reason, issue number 2 is that on YouTube, the teaching method and the content cannot be geared towards education. So we started with this whole big funnel. And I'm telling you that YouTube as a whole is not great for education because the goal of YouTube is to keep you on the platform and clicking more videos, which is just going to distract you from actually practicing. That's the goal. If we take it one step further and just look at someone who, let's just say their only goal on YouTube is to teach guitar, they don't do any gear reviews. Their entire channel is just based around teaching. Even they will fail to teach you what you need to learn. And they have to fail because YouTube is forcing them to fail. It's not their fault. And here's why. The educational materials that are going to make you improve the most are not the educational videos, are not the educational materials, are not the lessons that you actually think you want to learn. You think you want to improve on guitar, and you think the fancy videos where you learn licks or where you learn a solo, you think those videos are going to help you. And since you think those videos are going to help you, YouTube pushes those videos. And as YouTube pushes those videos, you think they're going to help because you see more of them and you click them. And we start this vicious cycle. And as a result, a large majority of the actual videos that will help you actually improve will not ever get recommended to you. Think about that. This is serious stuff. As a learner, as someone who's early in the learning process, you don't know what you need to learn yet. You don't know. You don't understand yet. When I'm learning something new, I don't know what I need to learn yet. No one does at the beginning. You just can't. But you do know what entices you. You don't have to even think about what entices you. It just entices you, right? So you come on YouTube to learn and you think 10 licks from Eric Clapton is going to be the video that makes you a better guitar player, but it's not. And so you watch that video and you get the dopamine rush of the great content and the great editing and the great thumbnail and the great playing. And you might even learn those licks. But most likely halfway through learning those licks or halfway through watching that video, you see another video on the side that makes you want to watch that video instead. You know what? Let's give another real life example. I'm going to type it right now on YouTube in my incognito window, guitar lesson. And we'll look at the first few that pop up. So easy guitar lesson online. And then we have guitar lessons at home, the best online guitar lessons. I'm going to click on the first video that enticed me, and that was this video by Sean Daniel. It's titled Intermediate Guitar Lesson to Transform Your Playing. Now, I'm assuming Sean Daniel is a great guitar teacher. I've never watched any of his videos, but I'm assuming he's a great guitar teacher, just starting from there. And I'm assuming this video is going to teach me something that's actually useful. I'm assuming that if I watch this video start to finish, since he's a good guitar teacher, I'm going to learn something that's very useful for my guitar playing. I click on the video. Of course, we have an advertisement. But the first thing I'm going to naturally do on YouTube after I start this video is I'm going to start to scroll down. And what do I see? Another lesson, how to shred on guitar. Learning slide in 1 week. 5 strumming mistakes. Oh my God. 5 strumming mistakes that will ruin your sound. Okay, now as a learner, I don't want to ruin my sound. I better click that video. And now I'm on to the next video. And you get the point. You've all done this. I've done this for hours. Hours on. I've done this for years. I was on YouTube before YouTube was even popular. I'm of that generation where I was obsessed with YouTube when I was in high school. It's all I wanted to do was watch YouTube videos. So I've been down this rabbit hole for a very long time. The content that gets clicks is not the content that will get you better. It isn't. And the reason it's not the content that will get you better is because you don't know what you actually need to get better unless you have already gotten to a point where you no longer need YouTube. For the most part. And of course, that brings us to issue number 3, which is your inability to focus. And we're going to relate this all back to my original example. And that's how we're going to tie this all together. YouTube, again, is not designed to keep you necessarily focused on one video. It's designed to keep you on the platform. It doesn't matter if you're watching this video or a different video. YouTube just wants you here so it can serve you ads, okay? And of course, that constant ability to look at another thumbnail and another interesting title is destroying your ability to focus on the video you're learning from, which is destroying your ability to focus on learning itself and improving on the guitar. So we're going to take these 3 issues. We're going to compare them to our best example of how to learn. And we're going to go back and forth and see why YouTube is going to absolutely make you worse. Here's the first thing. Like I said, the platform itself is not geared for education. So, of course, you can't play with an actual guitar player on YouTube in real time and have that real musical experience. But fine, let's say you're a solo guitar player, you don't need that. You can't get real time feedback. So you can't have someone correct you right there. But fine, let's say you don't even need that because you're past that stage. It's not made for you to actually learn. Because what's actually the best way to learn, one-on-one with one person, no distractions, nothing else bothering you, just you and your instrument and that person and their instrument. We can replicate that on YouTube, which we'll talk about in part 3, but it's very, very difficult. It's difficult because the idea of focus is very, very hard. And it's also really difficult because, issue number 2, the content you're being recommended is not the content that's going to make you better. So here's a real life example of something I went through as a guitar player. I used to have this bad habit of playing notes very, very short. And it wasn't intentional. Sometimes you want to play notes short on purpose. But if you don't actually hear and feel that you're cutting notes off very quickly and playing them short, then playing note shorts becomes an issue because it's become your default and you can't break out of it. And I didn't realize I had this issue. And since I didn't realize I had this issue, I didn't know I needed a lesson on that particular thing. It took 3 different guitar teachers telling me this, that I was doing this, before I actually realized it myself. And I realized it myself after a Skype lesson. I went back and was trying to listen to the lesson and trying to, remember what we talked about. And I heard myself actually playing and I said, oh, that doesn't sound like I wanted it to sound in my head. Then I went through the process of recording myself playing the same lick over and over. And I had to relearn how my brain was interpreting the length of notes. This is true for me in general, and it's why sometimes I talk too fast and sometimes I stumble and stutter. It's because my brain often works faster than my body can keep up with, be it my tongue or my hands. So I had to go through a process of learning to slow down my brain or slow down my hands so that the two are in sync. Now, of course, no YouTube video could diagnose that because there's no diagnostic portion of YouTube. I needed someone in person to tell me that, who understands the issue. But on top of that, the content that I was being suggested on YouTube at that time is so far away from that type of a lesson. That type of a lesson that will transform your guitar playing, that will address one of your major issues, is something that you will never see on YouTube. Never. It's too specific to one person. It's too useful because after you learn that, you won't need to stay on YouTube looking for guitar lessons. That type of a guitar lesson goes against what YouTube wants, which is to keep you on the content, watching more videos. And since it goes against what YouTube wants, YouTube will never show that video. And since you never see that video, you never learn you have that issue. And then the cycle continues again. Okay? And of course, all of this time, this is just continuing to diminish your focus. And when we talk about the idea of learning one-to-one from a guitar teacher, a big part of that is focus. If you were to try to learn one-to-one with multiple teachers in one day, that wouldn't be the best way to learn. That would not be the best way to learn. Trying to learn legato from Tom Quayle while learning rhythm from Tomo Fujita, while learning alternate picking from Paul Gilbert, while learning jazz from Jonathan Kreisberg. If you were trying to learn all of those things scattered around in that way, you would not improve at the rate that you should improve because there's too much information coming in and your brain is busy processing all the data without actually making the real structural connections in your brain that will make you a better better guitar player. I mean, if you're a better guitar player, maybe you'll be a better person too. But if we were to just imagine a real life situation where we're learning something, could you imagine that? If you were trying to learn how to be a gardener and every 3 minutes you went to a different gardening teacher and tried to learn their method? When we think about it in that way, it's pretty obvious that this is not the best way to learn. Every time you're learning from a gardener teaching you how to plant a plant, a different gardener walks by and says, "Hey, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. You need this lesson. This is the way to do it." And then when you move to that person, a different person walks by and says, "No, you don't need a shovel. You need a rake." "Oh no, you don't need a rake. You need clippers." Actually, you don't need clippers. You need cat videos. You get the point. When we think about learning in real life and think about what YouTube is doing to us, the two are not linked, and it's very, very difficult to overcome that. I'll end with this, and keep in mind we're going to talk about how to actually use YouTube the right way in the future. But I'll end with this. If you think you are the exception, oh, Andre said that stuff, but I'm smart. I turn off YouTube. I know how to control myself. Maybe you are the exception. Maybe you are that special. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not. I'm not smart enough. I'm not diligent enough to not let YouTube destroy my practicing. I can't do it. Not until recently, that is. And you have to remember this. YouTube and Google is $1 billion company. It might even be trillion. I don't even know. They're definitely $1 billion company. They have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of employees. They have machine learning. They have algorithms. They have the best scientists in the world who are all dedicated to making sure that you don't win. I am not arrogant enough to think that I'm going to outsmart hundreds of thousands of the smartest people on the planet who are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to outsmart me. Maybe I can outsmart one, maybe even two. But hundreds of thousands of them whose job it is to outsmart me, whose job it is to make sure that they're a step ahead. I'm not that smart. I'm not. I'm not that disciplined either. Of course, you could just go over to andrefludd.com/courses and buy one of my courses, and then you don't have to worry about any of this stuff because there will be no distractions. But, whatever. Anyway, now I'm just being silly. We're going to wrap up. I encourage you to listen to part 2, where I explain why most guitar teachers suck. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.